Colleague Dina Igoe and I are going to talk a little bit there about how apprenticeships work, what they are, and how you can maybe start one up in your company, and what are some of the resources and support available to you to be able to do that. So thanks again, all of you, for being here. We do have a small group, so we're going to start with a little introduction. So you can put it in the chat, your name, your organization, and your role, and what does your best fall day end with? So I'm Dorinda Byers. I'm here today. I have my own firm, and then I'm here today with MSG, with the Manhattan Strategy Group. So you're going to talk a little about what your best fall day ends with. Mine ends with cotton candy and a walk in the sunshine. I love to eat cotton candy, and there's lots of different fall festivals. So I love to be able to enjoy some cotton candy at those fall festivals. So pop in the chat what your favorite fall day ends with and what your role is. And Dina, I see you're putting something in here. So what does your best fall day end with? A nice run. Good. Okay. So
Yeah.
similar to me liking to stay active, but you like to run, whereas I'm just more in the walking. So what about everybody else?
I would
Just
say, yeah, I prefer the activity on the front end of the day. So I would say sitting on my back porch. And I'm Claire with, well, WEN Ohio, but then officially with API, the American Petroleum Institute. So
thank you. Ooh, Sabrina, a fire outside. That sounds nice. And state mobilization manager. Thanks for being here today. With API. Okay, great. Thank you for being here. And it looks like we've got some others that are still typing to put in there what their favorite fall day is, unless they just want to say that. Oh, Chris Bourbon and going to bed early. Now I could get behind that, going to bed early too, because I don't sleep well. So I like that. I like that one too. Mandolin, what about you?
Sorry, today's been not great for technology. I couldn't get my audio to work, and now I can hear you. So
that's all right.
Favorite fall day, is that what you said?
What does it end with? Yes, the best fall day ends with
a great night's sleep. I'm telling you, there's nothing better than 8 hours of sleep.
Okay, so we've got some people on here that really like that sleep, which I can totally relate to the sleep thing too. So I think that is also a good one. And Sarah, I see a walk outside admiring the leaves. That's a good one. We're a little behind, I think, this year on the leaves with all of the drought. So yeah. So did everybody get a chance to answer? I think so. And if so, we're going to move on and start talking about our topic of the day, which is our apprenticeships. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk a little about what is a registered apprenticeship and just give you an overview of what a registered apprenticeship program is. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the project Dina and I are working on, which, as you see in the logo here, is the Supply Chain Automation Workforce Hub, and how you partner with the hub. So that's what we're going to talk about today. That's what's on our agenda for the day. So first, we're going to touch on an overview of registered apprenticeship programs. So do very many people here know about registered apprenticeships, or are you here to kind of learn about registered apprenticeships? Anybody know much, or we're here to learn more?
I think both.
Okay.
I mean, for me personally, yeah.
Okay. So we have kind of a mix. Okay. Well, we all know there's a lot of challenges going on with workforce. I just did a presentation last week touching on that one bullet on the left-hand side about retiring employees. And I think this is a shocking statistic. In the United States right now, there are 11,000 individuals turning 65 years old every day from 2024 through 2027. So that retiring workforce and that aging workforce is very much a real issue. And I'm sure it's hitting some of you at your companies. In addition, as Mandolin and I were chatting a little bit before the webinar got started, we have some shifting expectations among Gen Z. So Gen Z, some of those younger workers, is really looking for an opportunity to be mentored on the job. And they're also looking for different opportunities outside of college. College doesn't hold as much appeal to them as it once did. So there are some needs for new training models to better meet Gen Z where they are and to better meet some of these challenges like retiring employees. Additionally, apprenticeships can also help with turnover because we're bringing people in and they're getting trained on the job and they have a very clear career pathway. We see some of the statistics that registered apprentices, 90% retain employment upon completion of their apprenticeship. So some good statistics. In addition, I'm sure many of you are facing a shortage of skilled workers right now. Dina and I talk to companies every day all over the United States who are facing those shortages. An example, there's about an 80,000 worker shortage predicted just for the smart electrical grid by the year 2030. So we have some really serious shortages, and registered apprenticeship can be a great solution to help meet some of these workforce challenges that we have. Next slide, please, Dina. So what is a registered apprenticeship program? Well, Dina and I get questions all the time about, well, is an apprenticeship an internship? I just had that a couple of weeks ago when I was at a conference, and the answer is no. Apprenticeship is very different. Apprenticeship can actually leverage, if you have some older workers on the job, some very experienced workers, that knowledge through the mentoring. It actually allows you as the employer to put together a training program to train individuals in the way that you want them trained, leveraging that expertise of some of your veteran workers. You also have individuals who are paid to learn while they're on the job. And then there's a classroom component that actually complements what they're learning on the job too. So there's those pieces that you see at the bottom, the paid job, the education, and then finally a credential. So you actually get to earn as an apprentice a registered credential, a portable credential that you can take with you anywhere you go. And the Department of Labor actually also then registers those apprenticeships. And another statistic I think that's important for companies to be aware of is 87% of all sponsors of apprenticeships in the United States strongly recommend that training model, and another 11% recommend it. So those who are doing apprenticeships have about a 98% satisfaction rate with apprenticeship as a training methodology. So apprenticeship works very, very well. It's also something that's really big in Europe, and we're just seeing it start to increase here in the United States. But companies over in Switzerland, for example, Austria, Germany, have been using this model for many years. So although it's just recently become a bigger opportunity to train here in the United States, it's something that's been done globally now in some other countries for many years. Next slide, please, Dina. One of the things we like to talk about with registered apprenticeship is some of the ROI. So what you see here, we touched earlier on that 90% placement rate, but as an employer, an apprentice can actually help you to realize an $18,000 gain in your bottom line and a median ROI of 44%. With a $1.47 return for every dollar spent on apprenticeships. From the apprentice's perspective, it's also a great way for them to learn and earn, and they can avoid debt, and they also can gain a huge opportunity to improve their lifetime earnings by about $300,000. So it really is a win for everyone. Also, I think we touched earlier on Gen Z. This meets Gen Z where they are. About 48% of all Gen Z employees and workers really want to see those on-the-job opportunities to learn, and another 46% are looking for opportunities to advance in their career. Apprenticeship offers both of those because you have a very clear career pathway laid out through that apprenticeship program. Next slide, please, Dina. So what are some of the benefits? I touched earlier on one that I really want to hit on, which is that one in the left-hand column, that customized training plan. So from an employer's perspective, you can put together and really drive that training curriculum. And it's being done in your facility if your organization is the sponsor. So you have a lot of control over the type of training that's being given and how it's being given and how it's being measured. There are about 150,000 employers all over the country with more than 1,000 occupations in apprenticeship. So again, apprenticeship has really grown. There are a lot more employers doing this and a lot more occupations than there used to be. We are helping companies with anything from an electrician role to a construction task laborer role. So there can be a wide variety of types of occupations involved. Again, we touched on the career advancement, the increased skills and wages, a chance for the worker to earn and learn those credentials. And again, from the employer's perspective, it can create a great talent pipeline, also help with productivity because you actually have someone learning on the job. So you're not having to pull them out for training because some of the training takes place on the job. And again, helping with some of that reduced turnover. Next slide, please, Dina. So there are three types of apprenticeships. One of those is time-based. What does that mean? Well, that means that there are 2,000 hours of on-the-job training and 144 hours of related technical instruction. So it's very much time-based. Once the apprentice completes those things successfully, they can advance to that next phase. Generally, it's about 144 hours of RTI, the related technical instruction, and 2,000 hours of on-the-job per year. But the amount of time of an apprenticeship can vary. It may not be, 4 years. It may be 1 year. It may be 2 years, etc. Again, Dina and I have worked with a number of companies, and they structure those apprenticeships and the amount of time for what works best for them. A competency-based apprenticeship, what does that mean? Well, that means that the apprentice actually demonstrates the skills. So if I'm out here learning how to, let's say, wire up an electric pole, I actually demonstrate that skill and the employer signs off on it. So that's the difference with a competency versus time-based. The time is all about completing the time. The competency is about me being measured on that. And a hybrid is a combination of the two. So there's a combination of time and a combination of the demonstration of the competency by the apprentice as well. So it's kind of a combination with that hybrid program. Next slide, please, Dina. What are some of the components of an apprenticeship? Well, we touched on the paid job. So the apprentice is actually working at the company, receiving a wage. Then there is the structured on-the-job training that goes along with that. There is mentoring. And again, a lot of the Gen Z workforce is looking for mentoring. So apprenticeship is a great solution because we take that really experienced worker and we pair them up with that apprentice and they learn together. And the mentor helps the apprentice learn and grow on the job. So it's also a great way to capture some of that knowledge of those experienced workers and get them involved with our apprentices. Also, that industry recognized credential. Again, we touched a little earlier on how some of our younger generations are looking for different ways to learn. So those industry recognized credentials can be a great way for them to get that learning that they want. So it's really great. Also, with apprentices, the amount of apprentices in the U.S. has increased about 64% from 2016 to 2023. And we now have over 1.3 million new apprentices also from that time frame. So again, apprenticeship is really starting to catch on because it can be a really great model used for a number of different occupations. Next slide, please, Tina. What partners are involved? Well, partners like us who are a DOL intermediary. Dean is going to talk a little about how we can help you, but there are also other partners that can help an employer. Those educational providers, for example, our community colleges. We here at the Hub work with a number of those community colleges who might be providing some of that related technical instruction. Dean and I also work with some workforce boards. Those workforce boards can be a great way to help you recruit for your program. So you may need partners to help with things like recruiting, to help with things like that related technical instruction and that training, also to provide support services to your apprentices. So if an apprentice, for example, needs help with childcare, that's where some of these community-based organizations could come in, the workforce boards, etc. So apprenticeship is very much also a partnership model where we can pull a lot of other partners in to help us develop that training, recruit those apprentices, and provide those support services. Next slide, please, Dina. So what are some responsibilities of a sponsor? Well, there's different types of sponsors. So as an employer, you can sponsor your own registered apprenticeship. Also, many of you are probably familiar with the labor union model, where the labor union actually sponsors an apprenticeship and provides that related technical instruction. And then Dina and I also work with, again, some of those intermediaries like a community college or a workforce board who are sponsoring those apprenticeships. And then there might be able to be small groups of apprentices from various companies. So often if an employer maybe is a little larger, they can sponsor their own apprenticeship and have, a number of different apprentices studying the same kind of apprenticeship occupation. But if you are a smaller company and you're looking maybe to pair up with other companies, that's where that intermediary model can work great for you, because you may have apprentices then from a number of different companies essentially in that program together. The apprenticeship sponsor is the one designing that registered apprenticeship program, providing some of that mentoring to the apprentices, and then also providing employment to those apprentices. Next slide, please, Dina. What are some of the responsibilities of a sponsor? Well, I touched on those a couple minutes ago, but these are some of the other responsibilities. Keeping track of paperwork for the apprentice so there are good records on what the apprentice has completed and when, especially with that related technical instruction. Also, making sure that the apprentice is tracked through that on-the-job training work process, the apprenticeship agreement, providing proof of those wage increases, and then also making sure we have that equal employment policy and some of those hiring records. There is some data entry required into the Department of Labor's RAPID system, and also some compliance to make sure that we are ready for those DOL program audits. Again, don't be intimidated when you see this. Dina is going to talk about it, but we can help you with these things at no cost. Our services are available to you at no cost, and we can help you if your company wants to get started. So don't get intimidated. We often get those calls because people think the process is so complicated, but that's where we can come in and help at no cost. Next slide, please, Dina. So how do we build a registered apprenticeship program? Well, our first step there is to start researching and looking for those partners, and then also maybe looking at an occupation we're interested in. The Department of Labor has a free occupation finder. So if you're interested in knowing that a particular occupation you have, whether it has been an apprenticeship program or not, the Department of Labor has a free occupation finder where you can go and search for an occupation similar to yours and see if a registered apprenticeship program has already been registered. So again, this is another great resource to you because if there's a program that's already registered, you could potentially talk with them and get some best practices and ideas. We also want to, in that first part, be looking for those partners who can help us recruit and who can help us with some of that planning. That second step is actually looking at the occupations and who's going to sponsor. And again, we can think about us sponsoring, or if there are a number of other companies out there that might be interested in that same occupation, maybe we want to go with a group sponsorship kind of model where we have one of those intermediaries sponsoring. We also want to be looking at, again, the occupation and how are we going to recruit? What is our recruitment plan going to look like? And that's where, again, maybe some of those partners could help us for recruiting for those apprentices, because that recruiting and outreach is very important, and having them be able to help us to get new participants into that apprenticeship program. We also want to be able to submit standards to the Department of Labor. And again, Dean is going to talk about that, but the Department of Labor does also have a standards finder available at no cost where you can start looking to see if standards for an apprenticeship program have been developed already. And if so, then you can take a look at those as a good starting point. So I hope you're seeing that there are a lot of resources out there if you're interested. Also, then once you have those standards ready, you're going to submit those to the Department of Labor. And then that phase 4, you're actually going to launch the apprenticeship. You're going to start recruiting, you're going to start enrolling, and you're going to start some of that tracking as a sponsor in terms of rapids and some of those agreements that are required. But there are a number of resources to help you. Next slide, please. I mentioned earlier how there's a variety of industries. These are some of the different industries now that are actually pursuing, and we see energy is listed there, different apprenticeship programs. Again, there are a wide variety. We may have thought in the past, maybe things like construction, which is true. Construction is still doing apprenticeship. However, there are also things like truck drivers, and we know there are huge shortages, for example, of truck drivers. So apprenticeship can be a great way to get some additional candidates into that pipeline. Corrections officers, teachers, medical assistants. These are some of the other occupations now that are actually doing registered apprenticeship programs. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dina, and she's going to tell you a little bit about how we at the Hub can help you in your organization. Dina, take it away.
Thanks, Dorinda. That was great. Can you hear me okay? Yes. Okay, wonderful. So with all of that said about what registered apprenticeship is and the different industries that use it and all the pieces of the wrap, then what is someone like us, as Dorinda said, an industry intermediary contracted by the Department of Labor, sort of how do we fit into that process? So like Dorinda said, we call ourselves the Supply Chain Automation Workforce Hub, and our particular occupation or industry sector, if you will, from all of the ones that she just showed you on that slide right before, is supply chain automation. So supply chain automation is really big. I mean, we know there's been woes in the supply chain, especially since COVID. So supply chain is one of those, is what they call emerging industry sectors in apprenticeship. So maybe not like construction or advanced manufacturing, they've been around forever. Those are the ones that we know well of. Supply chain is one of those that's more emerging industry, but has really come on strong in the apprenticeship realm. So it's really just logistics, material handling, anything inside, the walls of the warehouse is technically supply chain related. Handling materials, industrial maintenance of machines, moving goods from one place to the other, and making it all automated and basically improving efficiencies with the processes is really supply chain automation. So when Manhattan Strategy Group, which is our company, received this contract from the Department of Labor, we had bid on this particular industry sector because that we knew that this was really emerging and upcoming and there's going to be a lot of need. So part of that definitely includes advanced manufacturing because there's a huge overlap between sort of the supply chain jobs and the advanced manufacturing sector, as well as building trades. So this is many, many different jobs. This is just a list of sort of supply chain automation occupations that we as an industry intermediary in this particular sector work with. So, I mean, as Dorinda mentioned, it's anywhere, it's electricians, it's CDL drivers, it's CNC machinists. We're talking about mechatronics, definitely a lot of engineers, electricians in the energy sector, especially clean energy. Power lineman is a really big one. And then, this new sort of EV sector that's really come on strong. I mean, there's a lot, we work a lot with actually CWD, which is the Clean Energy Workforce Development Organization, and they have connected us to a lot of clean energy and sort of energy companies. And those occupations are definitely part of the supply chain. And even like wastewater plant operators, that's a big one. So there's so many more jobs than we knew originally when we took on this contract that really fit into this occupational sector. So that's all to say that there are a ton of occupations that really fit into this that we can support. And there's definitely more. This is just kind of a short list. So you'll say, okay, so show me who are the other intermediaries. So right now, Department of Labor contracts with, I think this is 20, or I think maybe there's now 24 of us companies and different contractors that, like you can see, our industries are on the right side. So I highlighted Manhattan Strategy Group. You'll see our occupation, our industry, supply chain automation. But look at all of the other folks that are doing this work. And we have contact information for all of them. So if you've got an IT program or healthcare or hospitality or even early childhood education, there's people like us doing this work completely for free in all of these industry sectors. So I like showing the slide because this list is growing. So every year they add, 3 or 4 to this list. We are now in year 4 of our contract, or almost year 4. And there's people that have been doing this longer, and then there's people that have just come on board. So, it's sort of, this is this support and the resources that are available completely for free for companies, employers, and other stakeholders who are looking to stand up registered apprenticeship. So we have this list. It's actually put out by the Department of Labor. If anybody wants it, we have the contact information for all of these folks. So the role of intermediaries is, pretty simple. It's really to connect the partners together. It's to help to stand up registered apprenticeship programs and also, develop them, but also scale them. I mean, if there's a program that's been around forever, but there's nobody in it, a registered apprenticeship intermediary can come in and help recruit apprentices. We increase awareness of obviously the apprenticeship model by doing things like these kind of webinars. We go to a ton of conferences. We sit on a lot of industry panels, and we bring people together. I like to say that an industry intermediary is like your guidance counselor, your free guidance counselor, because we're not going to run the program for you. That is not what we do. We can help to stand up the program. We can help to put together curriculum pieces. We can help to take a training program and make it a registered apprenticeship and work through the state level folks, offices of apprenticeship or federal offices to help you through navigating the registration process. But we will not be managing the program for you. So an employer who wants to be the sponsor does have a responsibility to, keeping the records for all the apprentices, to taking the apprenticeship contracts and putting into the system, the registered apprenticeship system, which is Rapids. Dorinda mentioned that. But we are there to sort of guide you through that process and make sure that you have a sustainable program even after we are gone. So that's really the role of these intermediaries. And so what about the hub? What do we do specifically? We call ourselves the hub because it's a long name, Supply Chain Automation and Workforce Hub. But basically, we do all those things. Our goal is to really promote the recruitment and training of supply chain and advanced manufacturing specialists. We use the registered apprenticeship model to do that. So we form partnerships between all of these different folks involved. It's employers, it's workforce boards, it's community and tech colleges, it's different community organizations that can be involved in a local area of standing up these programs. We support definitely diverse talent pipeline. So our goal is to help recruit people of color, especially in veterans, into these registered apprenticeships because they're not technically a target audience or an audience or folks that have gone into these type of jobs, and we want to get them in them. They're very well paid, and it's a career pathway. So that's another thing that we can help with, is to diversify the talent pipeline, also including women. And we provide a lot of different supports, so technical assistance, but also we do have some financial incentives. So every year we get a pot of money from the government to be able to help to offset the cost of training for apprentices for those programs that want to be registered. It's not a ton of money, but we are able to help with about up to $1,000 per apprentice. For those programs that are really looking to, stand up a new occupation, or they're looking to scale, or they're brand new. It does help to offset the cost of training. And the money can be used, to purchase equipment for apprentices, to pay for curriculum, to buy books, to do things like that, to provide transportation. So it really goes to support the apprentice themselves. There's a cap. Every employer can get up to $30,000 per year because, there's some unions that will have hundreds of people, hundreds of in one cohort of apprenticeships. And then there's some smaller companies that will have 4 or 5. And we want to make sure that we are spreading this money far and wide. For this past year, we're already out of money, which it goes to show you money goes quickly. It's first come, first serve, but we will get a new pot starting in 2020, early next year. So there's incentives, financial incentives to help people with registered apprenticeships. There's also a lot of state level and federal funding that you can, use as well. That's part of the reason why employers are really also interested in registered apprenticeship, is because it opens up a lot more opportunities for tax breaks, different state level incentives that you won't have if your program is not registered. So, it pays to it pays to work with us. So I went through a lot of this already, but we also do a lot of outreach and marketing for our sponsors. Again, we help register programs, and we sort of connect the dots. So this is just another slide to show exactly what we do, but I pretty much went over this. And so, we wanted to show you exactly what does it look like working with us. So we wanted to show you a sample technical assistance plan. So once we meet with a sponsor or an employer, and let's say we helped them through the registration process of their program, or they already have a program that's up and running, we get together, we do a needs analysis of sorts. We ask, like, what are your needs for the program? Do you have issues recruiting? Do you have issues retaining folks? Do you have problems with, getting mentors involved? Because you do have to have a mentor. As we like to call them, master trainers. Sometimes people are like, I've got so many people retiring, I don't have anyone to mentor these people. So we talk through strategies for bringing those folks in. So this is just here an example of a technical assistance plan that we put together for all of our sponsors. This is besides the money component. And we can work through this and figure out, what does everybody need? And then, we have a team of about 15 on the different experts and different, subject matter expertise in different areas. They can sort of work together to help to provide this type of technical assistance. So I think we've talked a lot. So we do want to kind of stop there and open it up for questions. I'm going to stop sharing so we can see each other, because there's not that many of us. And we would like to really kind of now turn it over to you guys and see, what questions do you have about any of this? The process, the intermediaries, all the things. So we would love to hear from you.
No, thank you, Dina. This and Dorinda, this is awesome. I think when I first heard about, Dorinda, when you first approached WEN about doing this webinar, I was immediately intrigued just because workforce, I think generally is a huge issue, a critical issue that not only our industry and, all the energy sectors are facing, but, more broadly. So it's definitely a very hot topic right now. And certainly our energy companies at WEN, those of us that we represent across the spectrum, the supply chain is obviously something that we all interact with and that our members are all interact with. So, really awesome presentation. Thank you. And we'll definitely push this out to those that could not make it and to all WEN members. I think this is a very useful resource. But I just wanted to ask, I guess in more simple terms, what are the steps that an employer can take? Like if an employer wants to be connected with the hub, how can an employer start working with the hub, or what are the steps that an employer needs to take to be connected?
Sure, that's a great question. So basically, very easy. They just email me. I mean, we're a small team, and then usually what happens is we will meet employers at events and things like that. They'll say, hey, this is a great idea, or yes, we'll share the slides, absolutely, and we'll also share the recording. So you don't have to take notes, but yeah, we'll share the slides with everyone. But basically, when we have employers that are interested, they come from all different, sort of areas. We will meet with them. We'll go through a very similar type of overview presentation, and then we'll see where they are. A lot of the time, people will send us, hey, I already have a training program, so here are the pieces, and then we kind of look at their program or look at their different competencies and say, okay, let's look at the occupation finder. Let's see, first you have to know the occupation you want to apprentice. Then you have to see what do you have. There's different pieces that you need a wage progression. You need to start them at a certain level and then end somewhere else. You need obviously your competency list. So we can help work through that. And so once the program is in good shape, we put them usually together, connect them with the people in their state who are actually going to be approving the registered apprenticeship. So it could be Office of Apprenticeship. Usually they have people that are called ATRs, Apprenticeship Training Representatives. They're the ones really who look at all the paperwork, right? And they say yes or no, or, go back. So what we do is we bring those people in early on. So they're working with the sponsors and us to make sure that they understand what you guys are doing. And if there's any questions, then you get all those answered and worked out before you actually submit all the paperwork. So that's something we do. We connect you to the right people. And then by the time that you submit it, it basically just has to be signed off on. So once the program is technically registered, then the fun part starts. That's recruiting people into the program. That can take some time. We can help with some strategies. So it's really a process. For those that already have RAPs, let's say a union that's really looking to scale, we work with them differently. We do something like we put together the TA plan, we figure out what they need, they apply for the incentive fund, we sort of work on that piece. So it's just really custom. We work with everyone differently. And if they're not ready to even go and develop a RAP, then we give them some resources to check out to make sure it's even the right fit for them, because there is a time commitment and a resources commitment that the employer and the sponsor need to make to running a federally registered training program, and we want to make sure that once we're gone, they're able to sustain that on their own. So we are just there to really guide you, like I said, like your guidance counselor, guide you through the steps and even to see if it's, the right fit for a company. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it definitely does. Thank you.
Dorinda, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I think the main thing that I would add, Dina, is, and I mentioned this a little earlier, Claire, Mandolin, Christian, Sabrina, that we are working all over the country. So right now, Dina and other people on the team work more on the technical assistance side than I do, but we're working on over 40 programs all around the country. So I just think it's important to know that, as Dina mentioned earlier, even if your company wants an apprenticeship and you're thinking, well, gosh, my occupation may not be supply chain, that's okay. Reach out to us. We can get you connected to the right people. And as Dina mentioned, you would would be very surprised at the diversity of some of the occupations that we've been able to work with, because the federal government has defined supply chain pretty broadly because they know companies are struggling with that issue. So we have a wide variety of different occupations we've been working in. And even if we hear from you and say, oh gosh, not sure we're the right place, we can get you connected to that other intermediary. And then the other thing I would say is that, and we touched on it earlier, we can also look at best practice models who are out there, because we've seen so much and done so much. Like, you might have questions about, well, gosh, I'm not sure if, competency is right for me, or hybrid or time-based or whatever. We've worked with a lot of different companies, so we've seen a lot of other best practices and can say, well, gosh, they did something similar over here in Rhode Island. Maybe that would be a good fit for you. So I think that's where, as employers, you all are always looking for the best way to do things. We've often seen those best practices because we're out there working in these spaces. So we can help bring some of those best practices to you, so you're not having to sit there and look for all of that on your own.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. About, both the kind of the scope of the hub and kind of where an employer might find those best practices. So that's very helpful.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I just put in the chat, we kind of collect a lot of resources too as we kind of do all these TA plans. The same things come up from people. So we are like, okay, we got to create some resources that we know everyone needs. A lot of it surrounding funding. Like, well, how do I get this paid for? We don't have the resources. So there's a lot on that. Or for specific groups, for veterans, for underserved populations. So we have a lot of resources that we've developed as an intermediary. So I just put them in the chat. So you guys feel free to check them out, to reach out to us. And if you're a company that's thinking about doing a registered apprenticeship, just kind of like reach out to us, and we will kind of talk specifically about your needs and your company. There's different ways of registration as well. Larger companies will register a national program. Smaller ones with only 1 or 2 locations can register a local one. There's a lot of different ways of actually getting these programs up and running as well. That's another thing that we can sort of help with, because sometimes people don't know. A really big company, doesn't make sense for them to register 10 different states. They may as well go for the national program.
Right.
Hopefully that helps. And any other questions? I know we have a few minutes left, and we actually made it in the hour, which I'm proud of us.
Yeah, I know.
I don't have any questions, but I found it really interesting. So I certainly appreciate the information, and I appreciate the willingness to share with us, and then for us being able to share it outward. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. We're happy to help. That's really our job, is to let everyone know that, look, we're here with just a tool in your toolbox. Another sort of way to also recruit and retain people, because this is definitely one of those. These nationally registered, validated programs by the Department of Labor, you just create a lot of PR and a lot of good, marketing validity surrounding your particular business and training model. And that helps a lot as well.
And we appreciate that feedback, Sabrina. Feel free to share within your network as well, because we all know how important that networking is. That's why we're here today, right? With the WEN network. So feel free to share, because we do know one of the things Dina and I struggle with is, just getting the word out, right? Because people are so overwhelmed with information. So sometimes, even if your company may not be the one that wants an apprenticeship, you may know somebody who does. So we really appreciate you helping us get that word out, because people are just overwhelmed with information. And there's so many misconceptions about apprenticeship that some of what Dina and I are doing too is really trying to dispel those myths. A lot of people think, oh, like I mentioned earlier, apprenticeship is internship. It's not. So we're really trying to kind of dispel those myths and help people see that it really is something that your company can do, because we find that people get overwhelmed by, the steps and think, oh, I could never do that. And the reality is there's a lot of support and help out there to guide you step by step and get you through everything, so your apprenticeship program could get up and running.
Yeah, I would also say that, there's this perception that it's construction only. It has to be 5 years. You become a journeyman at the end. So this competency-based now version is different. It's really for companies to, 18 months, a year to 18 months could be a really great registered apprenticeship. It no longer has to be this PhD in your field. because everyone knows that that's not really a reality for a lot of manufacturers and a lot of, power companies. And, they want to train, they want to get people up and running and working. So, there's been a lot of sort of, it's apprenticeship 2.0, if you will, changes to the model that people don't necessarily know. It's a lot more flexible now, and it's a lot more attainable for companies to have a wrap. So that's something that is something we are always, re-educating people about, if you will.
Sure.
Any other questions?
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. I came from a manufacturing and supply chain background. I only did it for like 4 years, but I just thought that this was really enlightening and really exciting. So I really enjoyed this. And just to see that the level of resources that you guys have that are free to employers and partners is amazing. So I'm super excited to work
free. All
Thank
free.
you guys.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
it's just about knowing that, the information's there, knowing kind of where to go and who to connect with. So
Yeah.
we put both, I think, Dorinda and mine emails in the chat. And, obviously the website's a great place. But if anybody wants to reach out to us, please feel free. That's our job. And we're super happy to partner with you guys. And thank you so much.
Yeah, we appreciate
Yeah,
it. And Mandolin, we know you're a good connector out there, as is
She
everyone
is.
here. So you're
Yeah.
going to be a huge resource to us in spreading the word on this. So we really
Yeah, and feel free
appreciate
to take any
all
of
of
those
that.
fact sheets off the website, print them out. If you go to an event, use whatever you need. These are public resources. Happy to share all of that.
Mhm. And Dina
Well, and I
mentioned it
think this
just
is
quickly.
only
Go
gonna
ahead,
grow
Sabrina. I'm
more.
sorry.
Sorry.
No,
No,
you
the
go
need
ahead.
for this is only going to grow more, just like you said, as we meet Gen Z. And, Mandolin and I are
Right.
doing a Jill of all trades event. And I think about just how important this interconnects with just getting those people into the workforce and recognizing that there's a space for them without a 4-year degree or, anything like that.
Absolutely. And if you ever need us, you would like to have us come and sit on the panel or talk about this particular sort of tool or, training model, we're happy to.
And we do have quickly as well, Sabrina, Mandolin, Claire, Christian, we've developed some slides on Gen Z too. So if that's something you'd like in the future, Dean and I can come and present on that. We just had to present to the other Department of Labor intermediaries back in July. Dean and I did on that topic, and that got a lot of attention. There's actually a fact sheet being developed that you might see on our website soon as a result of that. And I just quickly wanted to say to Dina's point about resources, just a quick example of something else we're working on. We're working right now on a series of mentoring webinars, because mentoring is something that, as we mentioned earlier, Gen Z has a lot of interest in. So those are some of the other kinds of things we try to put out there as, what are some best practices in mentoring? How could you go about setting up a mentoring program? So as Dina said, definitely check out that resources site, because new content is being added all the time. So there will be a new webinar or two added on mentoring here probably in the next month or so. So there's constantly new content being added as well. That's all out there available for you at no cost.
Great. Well, hey, you guys did it, and it's still in an hour, even with all the technical glitches.
Yeah,
So
that was amazing.
yeah,
Well,
thank you.